When it comes to education, schooling is of paramount importance. In the past few years, a lot of new methods of schooling have come up. While the boards of education have changed, the methodology and fundamentals of schooling have largely remained the same. There are schools that are coming up now, though, where they teach children in less structured environments and children are allowed to pursue vocations of their own interest. But is there any one best way of schooling? And if there is, then what is it? Today, we are in conversation with Partho. Partho has been an educator for more than 30 years, and he's also the author of a number of books. Two of his books that I've really enjoyed reading is Somewhere Among the Stars, which describes the experience of moving between different planes of consciousness. And the second one, which is the subject matter of today's discussion, is Integral Education Beyond Schooling. So before we go ahead, I'd like to thank Partho. So thank you, Partho, for your time. I'd also like to introduce my friend Kunal, who is with me in this podcast. He's an author, an entrepreneur, and he's authored a book on AI, couple of books actually, and he's a philosopher in the sense that he analyzes the impact of AI that it is having on our civilization. So let's begin. The book is so profound, I'll not be able to do any justice making any introduction about the book. So I'll start straight with the dialogue. So firstly, my first question is that the book is titled Integral Education. The word integral would mean something, would point to something which is more wholesome, which is more inclusive or more complete. So what is it that you found missing in the present education system that prompted you to write the book called Integral Education Beyond Schooling?
What did I find missing? Just about everything. And question is, what did I not find missing? Our present schooling system is driven by only a small portion of the head, predominantly academic oriented, information based mental education. So, first thing that is very obviously missing is a more integral work on the mind itself. So the mind is the intellect,
Yes.
which deals with academics, but the intellect is only one portion of the mind, one faculty of the mind. The mind also has other faculties that need to be simultaneously and integrally developed. Faculties like intuition, observation, uh, judgment, besides, of course, reasoning and logic and reasoning, which is the forte of the intellect. Even within the domain of intellectual education, reasoning and logic is way beyond what most educators or teachers and parents understand. So it's a very lopsided education, if one must call it an education of the mind. The heart, there's nothing of it. And there's hardly any emotional education. I can't think of any school or institute that really gives you a systematic emotional education.
Emotional education.
Yeah, an education to
Absolutely. That's missing.
inform your emotions, to help you evolve your emotions. That emotions haven't evolved over generations, have they? The way we used to emote several generations ago is still the way we emote.
Right.
So there's no sublimation of emotions. There is no ordering of emotions. There is no enlightenment of emotions. So That part is entirely missing. Physical, except for a very small aspect of the physical, which is just playing games and doing athletics. There is no real education of the body to develop the body, to make it a strong, supple, healthy instrument. The whole thing is missing. And if you go above the body, there's nothing in this education. Spiritual, psychic, nothing. So when you bring all these components, all these domains together, when you treat a child as a whole human being, not just a little portion of the head which studies and memorizes and reproduces in an exam format, but also an intellect, an understanding, a wisdom. And if you address the child as an emotional being, as a physical being, as a spiritual being, then you get what I mean by integral education. Incidentally, the term integral education was introduced by Sri Aurobindo. Okay. And is based on his yoga, which is called integral yoga. A yoga that integrates and works simultaneously on not just the higher consciousness and the soul, which is the domain of normal spirituality, but also the mind, the vital emotional being, and the physical. So exactly the same thing applies to integral education.
I did read in the book that with the modern education system, a child may grow up to be a scientist, but might not have evolved in his consciousness.
Yeah, might not even grow up to a scientist. There are very few children who grow up to be a scientist. At most, they make good science students. Scientists, count on your hand. Tell me, how many scientists have we produced in our schools and universities over the last 50 years? Hardly any.
Would you mean being a scientist is also a dimension of honing the consciousness?
Yes, absolutely. You can't be a scientist just by absorbing information from textbooks. Becoming a scientist, you need to develop your reasoning, your observation, your reasoning, your the ability to connect dots, the ability, and you have to have an intuition to go through the surface appearances and catch something behind it all. So a scientist is a more complete mind. So I doubt even the scientist part, but yeah, there is no development of consciousness. And if you have read the book, you have read the book, so you'll find that I have at places I've also called it a consciousness education. Integral
you have.
education is consciousness education.
Right.
It is an education that is working on the consciousness.
So, would you take a moment to define or help our viewers understand what is consciousness? Because a lot of us might not be aware of what consciousness.
That's a very difficult question to answer, and I have to write a whole book on consciousness.
Oh, all right.
It's very abstract, of course. And no one has been able to satisfactorily explain consciousness, not even scientists and philosophers. Everyone has no trying to describe consciousness is like those six blind men trying to describe an elephant.
Sorry?
Six blind men
Yes.
trying to describe an elephant.
Oh,
There's a
yes,
story.
I've heard that
remember?
story.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've quoted the story. Yeah.
Yes.
So each one describes the elephant according to what he is feeling. But he can't see the whole thing. So no one can see the whole thing because first fact is we are all consciousness.
Right.
You are here and you know you are here because of consciousness. Otherwise, you
Yes.
won't know you're here. You'll be like a rock. A rock doesn't know it's there because it
Yes.
doesn't have consciousness. So you know that you are because of consciousness.
Yes.
And that's at one level. Consciousness is also that you know you are Geet, that you have a certain biography, a certain narrative of existence, right? Which makes you Geet and makes him Kunal, makes
Yeah.
me Partho. That's consciousness, personal consciousness. And then this personal consciousness has so much of cultural influences, social influences, educational influences. So these are all, like you can imagine it as little streams coming and joining a bigger body of water, which then flows through
Yes.
time. So uh, Joyce used to call it stream of consciousness. He wrote books on this thing. He used the technique of the stream of consciousness. So I use the same phrase to explain consciousness. It's a stream of thoughts and memories, imagination, all that you've processed about your life, all
Hmm.
that you've come to understand, all that flows through you, which defines you as you.
Right.
And you identify with that as yourself.
Yes.
That's consciousness.
Right.
So again, there is a mental consciousness,
Hmm.
a consciousness that functions through the mind. So when I'm thinking, reasoning, then I'm using mental consciousness. Then there is an emotional consciousness. When you use your emotional consciousness, you're not thinking, not reasoning, which is why so many of us behave very differently when we use the emotional consciousness or when we use the mental consciousness.
That's
A
right.
rational human being can become pretty irrational in the emotional consciousness.
That's right.
Yeah. And then there's this physical consciousness,
Hmm.
which very few of us access. We don't know physical consciousness. We don't know how to work on it. We don't even know our emotional consciousness.
Hmm.
So again, these are domains of consciousness. So it's a vast topic.
Okay.
I remember someone like you had asked me this question that without understanding consciousness, we can't move with this education. So I said, are you serious? You really want to understand? And it ended up to be a 4 days retreat.
Oh, wow.
Because I said, there's no way I can give you the theory of consciousness. You have to experience it at
Yes.
various levels that I know. If I say mental consciousness, you're hearing mental consciousness.
Hmm.
But do you know what it is? Do you know how different it is from vital consciousness? You don't, till you don't experience it.
Experience it. Yes.
And I can't make you sit there and experience it. So it ended up to be a 4 days retreat,
All right.
residential retreat. They had to stay back.
Right.
And probably that's why even the scientists have not been able to define consciousness yet. And
No, they haven't.
that's what they call the hard problem of consciousness. One thing that no science can ever
No, yes.
try.
That's the major defect of modern empirical science because
Yeah.
we have kept consciousness out of it.
Yeah.
Right.
And this points to, I think, the deeper question that the problem with the education system, one of the challenges or the problem is that we are focusing on one part of our faculty of the mind or the brain, which is essentially preparing us to get a job,
Yes.
which used to be decades ago to be a factory worker. Today it might be to an
Yes.
engineer. And the focus is from educators to families to parents to kids
Absolutely,
to
yes.
study enough, score enough, memorize enough, cram enough,
Yeah.
whether you understand or not, so that eventually you can get a job. You can
Yes.
come among the top percentile, ensure you get a job so you have a life.
Yes. So it's utilitarian.
Yeah.
I've called it utilitarian.
Yes.
I'll sound a bit harsh, but I call it crassly utilitarian.
Hmm.
And we don't do anything with that. It's just you're reading books, memorizing information, and writing it in an exam. You don't even understand.
Yes.
You say, you know what, the ball falls to the ground because of gravity. Now explain that to me. Forget about children who learn this. Even teachers haven't been able to explain it to me. How exactly does gravity work? Adults cannot. How does it work?
Hmm.
So who goes to those depths?
Right.
And you said something about the brain. We don't work on the brain. How many of us can work on the brain? But in integral education, it's possible. It's possible to change the neural pathways of your brain. Do you know that? Do you know that human beings are perfectly capable of changing the neural pathways of their own brain?
Yes. That's right.
But Do our children learn that? Do our children even know that?
No.
Do our children even know how our brains work, except for whatever they study in their biology textbooks, which is very superficial?
Right.
So, yeah, most of us are in the dark.
So, conventional or the modern education system is not what I believe empowering. It does not really empower
No,
a
it is
child.
not empowering. It is, in fact, disempowering.
Right.
If I make you sit in a class of 20 other children and compare you all the time with the others and keep pressurizing, and not too subtly at that you have to be better than the others, you have to score better, you have to learn better. And if you don't conform to that, to those expectations, then what do you feel inside yourself? You don't feel good.
Right.
And then this hunger inside to feel good, to get the approval of your teachers and parents, that stays with you your whole lifetime. And what kind of adults do you have after that? Completely skewered adults. Which adult is healthy and mature today? Show me. Hardly any. All of them are twisted because they're all trying to prove themselves to someone else. I should have more money, more property, more this, more that, because inside you're empty, you're hollow. That is what our education system has made us, hollow. We are completely hollow. And we
Sorry.
don't, call it out.
Yes.
There's no one amongst parents or teachers to say the emperor is not wearing any clothes. And this farce is going on generation after generation. We are destroying our children. We are destroying our children.
So most of the problems our civilization, human civilization faces today, if you look around how we collectively act, humans are not that constructive collectively, especially. They might be constructive individually, they might be looking after their own goals, desires, outcomes, but not necessarily as humanity as a whole. Think about climate change, think about wars, think about politics, think about so many challenges that are threatening the existence of the human civilization. The best way to consider, try and solve that is at the education grassroots level.
Yes.
Yes.
There's
Because
no
otherwise, adults, the older
It's
ones,
too late by then.
it's too late, right? So the conditioning has to start at the education level.
Yes.
That is the best potential outcome. But who starts this? Kids themselves do not know.
No. Teachers
Adults
don't.
do not acknowledge. Parents do not necessarily
No,
are
see,
aware.
the teachers were kids at one time.
Kids, teachers, parents, politicians,
Parents were
educators.
also kids at one time.
Right.
So if we are giving the kids this kind of education,
Yeah.
and they become the teachers and the parents who
Yeah.
give their kids the same kind of education.
Yes.
So it goes on.
So where does the cycle break? How can we
I don't
have
know.
any hope?
We don't.
It's tough.
You
right?
said, I'm doing this for 30 years. I'm doing this for 40 years now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. I mean, this
Right.
my old biography perhaps is nearly 40 years, and I've stopped doing education. I don't see any hope. Why? Because parents are ambitious and teachers are stupid.
Right.
The education system on the whole is stupid.
Yes.
It doesn't function. Who suffers? Children.
Yes.
Why do I say teachers are stupid? Because they're doing it on a daily basis and it doesn't strike them that what they're doing is unintelligent. How can you be a teacher and teach the way you're teaching and not realize that what you're doing is unintelligent?
Right. Because it's not helping children reach the maximum potential neither of their brain nor of their
Yes.
human ability of being conscious.
Yes.
And therefore, we're working.
Brain, human potential of being conscious, emotions, the heart.
Right.
Where are they optimizing? With body?
Yes.
Look at the body of most children today. They're extremely weak.
Yes.
Immune system is gone. Young children.
Yes. It's
I
gone.
used to take young children to camps in the Himalayas. And at 3 times their age, I would complete a trek in half the time that they would take. And some of them wouldn't even complete the trek.
Yes.
What physical education are we talking about? There's some of them out of them. They are trained specially. So they're athletics they play. Even the games they play are not very interesting. This competitiveness is
Very structured also.
very structured, goal-oriented.
Yes.
Since when have games been goal-oriented? play, by definition, is goalless.
Right.
That's when you play. There's no goal. You play to enjoy. The moment it becomes goal oriented, you got to prove something. You're not playing anymore. Our children have lost the ability to play, to laugh, to be simple.
Yes. Simplicity is getting
It's
lost.
not there. I don't know how your parents, how many children you have heard talking to each other, not your own, of course. Other children just talking, or even your own children talking with their friends, and somewhere in the background you're listening to them. You will be amazed at the kind of conversations they have. I've done this a lot. Children don't talk like children, they talk like miniature adults. They don't talk like children. They don't have occupations and preoccupations like children.
Right.
They no longer engage in those fantasy plays that made scientists and artists and philosophers.
Ambition is being introduced to children too soon. Is that the reason?
Too soon, it starts from nursery. You go see a nursery class, see parental ambition is so stark.
How does it impact the psychology of a child, not just in childhood, but into adulthood?
See, the child is molded. It's being molded from the moment the child steps into a nursery. Are you not molding the child
Yes.
to conform to adult expectations? The adult tells you what to do, how to play, how to sit in classrooms, how to read, how to write, how to paint, how to draw.
Right.
Adult is telling you everything, how to grow up, what to study, what to do in life, what will follow what. Everything is like an algorithm driving
Right.
everything. And who writes the algorithms? The adults. Where do the children
Yes.
have any say in their own growth?
Right. In fact, in your book, you mentioned that. What I gather from this is that we are essentially dictating everything to children, so the children would not feel that they're in control of their life. And also in the book, you mentioned that play is the only time where a child feels that he or she is in control of his or her life. So,
No, not really. Not in
Okay.
control of his or her life. A child doesn't need to feel in control, you see.
okay.
A very important difference between a child mentality and an adult mentality is this need to be in control.
All right.
A child never feels the need to be in control. Wherever you find a child feels the need to be in control, be sure he or she is being driven by the parents.
Right.
It's coming from the parents. But listen, just go and see normal children who are not, I use the word, contaminated by
Right.
the adults. So see how they don't care about control. They just let go.
Right.
They get beaten up, they get thrown, they get dirty. Who cares? They're playing. They want a thing, if they don't get it, doesn't matter. This goes out of their hands, so it goes out. Life is a big play. You can't play if you want to be in control.
Right.
See, the moment you want to be in control, the ego has come in.
Yes.
The moment the ego has come in, play is finished. The ego can never play. It can never play. It can
That's right.
compete, it can win, but it can never play.
Cannot play.
So, this inability to play, we have no idea what it is doing to the nervous systems of our children, what it is doing to the prana of the children. Because you can't play. So, by the time they grow up, they get into universities, they lose control. University kids nowadays, you go to, I was working with some of the best universities of this country. I've stopped doing all that now. And I would say that the children just come to the university to freak out. And the exam's coming 3-4 weeks before that, then they'll sit down and take the exam and then again freak out. They just want to freak out. Why this need to freak out? Because they were never freaked out through their school lives. Suppression. So now suddenly college, boom, let's freak out. And that too, nowadays I'm finding not too many children really freak out because the pressure of competition, pressure of getting a good job or running a good business or earning a whatever figure salary, the pressure is so enormous. Peer pressure, parental pressure, institutional pressure, social pressure. It's so enormous that a college student, and I've done workshops with university students, I have heard it from them. They can't even freak out. Their freaking out is drug abuse, loud music, which assaults your senses,
Yes.
crazy sexual relationships, inability to develop and sustain real relationships, anxiety all the time.
Yes.
Anxiety all the time. And how did they cover that up? By being what they're aggressive and loud. Most university students aggressive and loud, disrespect for everything and everyone, because that's the only way they can be. Because they know just 3 years, 5 years, and then again back to something worse than the school. The corporate world is worse,
Yes,
100
it
times
is.
worse than school. If the school completely kills your mind, the corporate world kills your soul.
It does.
So all these successful people that you see around you are all dead inside.
Yeah.
And because they're dead inside, they need the artificial stimulant of wealth and power and sex and all that. That is what education is doing. I know I may be sounding very harsh,
But that's the reality.
there's no other way I can put it.
And somewhere we have to speak out about this because
We have to.
awareness needs to be created.
The challenge in so how this affects the adults, you talked about the corporate life. Just extrapolating and looking at some other examples, I don't think people are able to have a debate, a discussion, a political discussion about their favorite teams, their colors, their anything, because they're not taught to listen to the other point of view, to be open to receiving, to be open to
Yes.
hearing the other side. They're listening to respond.
Yeah.
They're listening so
Absolutely.
they can respond
Absolutely.
with what's preset in their mind.
To debate, you need a very high intellectual development.
Yeah.
Only true intellectuals can debate. Otherwise, the others can only fight and argue.
And this is what we see on political arena or many other
News
many other
channels as
news
well.
channels, anywhere. That just shows the quality of or the lack of quality of human abilities. Just to have an interaction, just to be able to talk, you are very quickly either you are with me, my way, or you go the highway.
Yes.
You are just we start abusing, fighting, writing off each other, and not interacting. And this is why kids also grow now these days more comfortable with devices, because devices like phones
That-
and
yes, that is-
tablets are still aligned to them. They are somehow
Yeah.
still not scalding them
So
or
they're in control in that.
they're in control, right?
Like
And they,
what you mentioned.
and this
Yes.
in control angle comes from the day they go to nursery, where the parents will try to put the kids into the best nursery for
Yes.
parents' ego, not for the kids' ego.
Yes.
Kid doesn't know.
And
They-
since the time they get into nursery, they're not ever in control.
yeah,
Yeah.
Now, if you take away the school environment, which is artificial, a child doesn't need to be in control.
Yeah.
Right.
But the moment you put a child in an artificial, structured environment like the school, he or she will be forced to be, because, then you need control, because you're powerless in a school. Disempowerment, as I said.
Yes.
And then what you're saying is a reflection of what happens when that carries on as a child grows.
I think it's not just the children who are disempowered. Even we as parents are disempowered of having a say over the way we would like to raise our children when we enroll
Yes,
them in a school.
Adults are disempowered.
So it's
Most of the
sorry.
complications of adult life is because we are deep inside, we are disempowered individuals. And we don't, somewhere deep inside, we know it, but we can't acknowledge it. Because the moment we acknowledge that we are actually, all of us are disempowered individuals, and all that we are doing, all the dramatics that we
Yeah.
do is to cover up this disempowerment. If we acknowledge that, we'll either become psychotic or we'll break out.
Right.
We'll
Happens
take
to
the
me.
first real step towards being human,
Right.
truly human.
I do sometimes feel like crying because I'm not able to do what I want to do for my children.
For your children, you should first be able to do it for yourself.
Right.
When parents come to me, I mean, they used to again when I was doing education,
Right.
And they said, how can I do this with my child? And I could see so clearly in their eyes they haven't done it for themselves. My child is not happy. And I saw it straight. Madam, are you happy? I can see you're not happy. You're not fulfilled. You're not happy.
Right.
How will you make your child happy and fulfilled? Forget it.
Yes.
And then they'll end up doing what everyone does, take the children for expensive European vacations and buy them everything that money can buy. And, oh, I'm making my child happy. Nonsense. You're not
That's
making
right.
a child happy. You're further killing the soul of the child.
Making the child more vulnerable, rather.
Using materialism, you're destroying the soul.
Yes.
That's what you're doing.
Because it wouldn't bring them lasting happiness anyways. So I read in the book, I found that very interesting, and it was beyond my understanding actually, that one of your students, I don't remember if it were a girl or a boy, when she would get a headache, she could focus so much on the headache that she could just pick it up like an insect and throw it out of the head and cure the headache. So this was really something new for me. So is that one of the possibilities of the mind to be?
Absolutely.
Can you?
Yogis do it all the time.
Wow. And this is what can be incorporated into an education
Absolutely.
system?
This is part of physical nervous education. This is part of it. This is education. True empowerment.
Yes.
What is true empowerment? First, it begins with your own body.
Right.
Then with your feelings and emotions. How many of us are truly in control of our feelings and emotions? We are not. We're not.
We're not even aware
Most of the time, we're not even aware. Right?
how to be in control.
And 9 out of 10 diseases human beings suffer from is because of our emotional mess that we live in.
Yes.
So empowerment is physical, then it's emotional, then it's mental, then it's spiritual. So there are stages, and it's the kind of education our children used to receive when they were in gurukuls.
Right.
When they were directly under the tutelage of enlightened beings. A gurukul is a place where it's the guru. The guru was a realized being.
Right.
And there were these children around him who would live in that place, in the gurukul, for anything between 20 to 25 years. And they would be integrally trained.
Right.
Mentally, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, physically.
So I'm imagining if that kind of focus can be developed in a child, that he can actually pull out the headache out of his head.
Yes.
So
Pull out the headache is a very small thing.
it's a small thing, okay?
Yes.
All
It
right.
sounds dramatic to you because we don't know how to do it.
Yes.
Instead of pulling out the headache, we pop in a pill.
Right.
But we can easily work on all these things, and these are preliminary. You can reverse aging. That's real stuff. Big ticket item.
Right.
You can change your cellular structure. You can change your DNA.
Oh, wow.
No, don't say, oh, wow. Get the science of it. What is DNA? What is the cell and what is DNA? Consciousness, isn't it?
Yes.
Basically, it's energy and consciousness. So what's
Yeah.
your mind? Energy and consciousness. It's a continuum. So you just need to know what this continuum is and how it works. That's what integrated education teaches you, that your mind and body are not separate. That's the first thing they teach you. Our present day schooling is the last thing they would ever come to, if at all they would. The first thing they'll teach you is mind and body separate. Everything is separate. This teaches you everything is one. Mind and body are one. What you are in the mind is what you are in the body.
Right.
So if you hold light in your consciousness, your body will be filled with light. This is the light of consciousness.
Absolutely.
And you can conquer disease. Conquer disease. No disease will ever come into you. Can you imagine that? Human beings who cannot have a disease. I mean, in yoga, we call it arogya. It's a siddhi. Arogya siddhi. No disease can come into your body. Every child can do that.
Yeah. The pharmaceutical industry would just
Will collapse.
So they would not allow this to happen.
Almost every industry will collapse. Your pharmaceutical will collapse completely. Your medical industry, entire medical business will collapse. Because you don't need doctors if you can heal yourself. And then when you start raising your consciousness, you won't even need to heal yourself. You will be healthy all the time. Nobody's distorting, nobody's twisting you around. So what disease can come to if no one twists you? You're playing and enjoying all the time.
Yes.
So medical industry will collapse, pharmaceuticals will collapse, food industry will collapse. Nobody's going to eat the nonsense that is
Yes.
being given to us in the name of food these days. What is killing our bodies is the food we are eating. Food industry will collapse overnight. 9 out of 10 of your corporate houses will collapse, close down, because nobody will go to that
95.
zoo to make a livelihood.
Absolutely.
They'll
Yes.
close down. Schools will close down completely. Nobody will want, they will learn directly from life. Because the consciousness will, that is the future. That's the last chapter of this book, where I actually go into beyond schooling.
Yes.
I have outlined the possibilities of the future, which is accessible to all of us, every human being on this planet.
Could you elaborate on that for us?
Yeah, I mean, every human being has the potential to become a superhuman being. We have enormous powers,
More than AI?
absolutely more than AI.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely more than AI.
Right.
Because the basis of this education, which is spiritual, psychic education,
Yes.
is that you are cosmic consciousness.
Right.
Now, if I say that, most people won't understand. What the hell? What is? Do you understand what that means, cosmic consciousness?
Only in terms of whatever I've read and understood, because
What
I've
have
not
you read?
I've not
understood?
experienced
So
it.
these are the gaps of our education system. They'll teach you physics. They'll teach you that all matter is made up of molecules and atoms. Universities will teach you all atoms are made up of quantum particles. Quantum particles are finally nothing but fluctuating quantum states or quantum foam. They will go to that point. Yet nobody will tell you that your body is made up of the same matter. Which physicist or which physics teacher tells you that? They'll tell you body is made out of atoms. Does anyone tell you that atoms don't really exist? It's just energy configurations.
Yes.
And even if a brilliant teacher manages to tell you that, he or she will need to be a teacher of quantum physics to tell you that. Does he or she extend it and say that, your body is also that quantum stuff? The moment he or she says that, your whole orientation will change. You will no longer think of this body as something solid and unchangeable and rigid.
Yes.
Suddenly it's quantum form.
Right.
It's enormously dynamic, fluctuating quantum fields. And nobody will tell you that this same body is also mind, because where is the difference? You're coming from the same source, singularity, Big Bang, whatever you call it. Everything in this universe is coming from the same source, which includes you. Which teacher will tell you that it includes you are cosmic dust? Have you heard any teacher tell you that? Which is a fact. Your identity is based on that. Your identity is not you're an Indian or you're a Brahmin or you're a this or that. Your identity is you're cosmic. You're made out of that same cosmic dust that began its journey billions of years ago in the singularity of Big Bang.
Yes.
So whatever has evolved as this universe is you. You are evolved cosmos. Yes or no?
Yes.
So do our teachers tell?
No.
Imagine now if I teach my children that kind of empowerment that will come to them, the kind of children that they will become and the kind of adults they will become. Cosmic consciousness. This world we live in will change.
That is what I was thinking, that in a way modern schooling is not only changing the way the society or the whole world exists, but it is also in a way robbing us of the ability of our children to be happy.
Yes, happy, yes, creative,
Absolutely.
strong, fulfilled,
Right.
everything.
So we've talked about the challenges. If we can, and you've covered a lot of topics from the book, and we hope any viewers of the podcast who want to will read out the book. Can you give some takeaways? Because this should start the change, if it were to happen, would have to start by parents realizing that there
Yes.
is a gap. Number one, they may not acknowledge it as of now.
No,
After watching this,
they
they
will
might,
not.
they may still not. For those who do acknowledge that there is a gap, there is a problem, we need to start fixing. And as you said, maybe before fixing anything with the
Yes.
kids, we need to fix ourselves.
Yes.
So for the parents watching specifically, anything you can share where they can start thinking, understanding, evolving in some sense, or at least questioning or
Yes.
observing?
Parents have to do what their children are always doing, their homework. Parents have to do a lot of homework. Which means what? Which means understand education before they put their children through it. Have you bought a car? You have. You have. Before you buy a car, do you do some product research?
Yeah.
You're putting in good money into the car. So you don't put in that money without doing product research, without understanding
That's
what
right.
you buy. Have you done any product research in education and schooling before you put your children into it?
Hmm.
No parent has.
Yeah, right.
That what is the schooling that you're going into? What is the school? What do they teach? What do they teach? Has any
Yes.
parent attempted to understand what is being taught? No one. Hardly anyone. And those who really question and find out what is being taught, they scream. They say, no way I'm going to put my child through this. Because
Yes.
what is being taught is nonsense.
I completely agree on that.
Absolutely superficial, shallow
Yeah.
stuff
But there is
that
no
the
other
mind
way.
can't even understand. Your children can't even understand what are they being taught.
Yeah.
And by the time they're grown up enough to understand, their ability to understand and process is lost.
Is lost. Absolutely.
So we are producing idiots, actually. Where is the genius? Where is that wise person, the wise mind, the mind of the genius, the scientist, the philosopher, the literature? Where are we producing these people? So the first thing the parents have to do is find out what they're putting their children into. What is this monstrosity called a school? Find
Yes.
that out. That's the first thing you have to do. And if you find it out, as you would say, good luck. 'Cause then you're in for a ride.
Yes.
Because knowing what you're putting your child into, you still put your child into that, you're a criminal.
That's me, I think.
Every parent, I hold every parent and teacher as a criminal. Somebody asked in one of the workshops, I was asked, what do you do with the teachers? I said, put them straight into prison, behind bars, so that our children are safe.
Yes.
And then do exactly the same thing with the parents. Put them behind bars. Let our children be safe, though that next generation we will have an enlightened humanity. Then the earth will be saved. Then all these issues you're talking about, degradation of the environmental degradation and poverty and inequality and war and violence, everything will be wiped out because you'll have the first generation of enlightened, loving, compassionate, wise human beings, uncontaminated, undistorted by parents and teachers.
Right. But
That's the homework you have to do.
right. So that's what I want to ask. Like, I am pained by the present education system, but I don't even know what to do.
So many parents are choosing that no school, homeschooling.
Yeah.
That's difficult, but it's the first step.
Yeah.
Second step is to find a school somewhere which has at least taken the first step. Even those, there aren't many, and even those there are imperfect because there are too few and far between.
Yes.
And teachers too, who are going to these schools too, are also the same breed of. So then the next revolution has to start. Parents like this, and this is how the school that I used to head in Delhi years ago, called Mirambika, the first innovative free progress school in this country, after which a whole lot of experimental schools were set up, including Krishnamurti schools, and a lot of schools came up after that.
Okay.
Krishnamurti himself was a revolutionary educator.
Yes.
So it began simply by a few teachers and parents who sat together and said, enough of this nonsense. We are going to make our own school because there wasn't any anywhere. So Mirambika was born.
Right.
The first breakthrough in education in this country. Absolute non-structured, where the child would come and play and learn as you play and learn at your own pace and learn what you want to learn, not what we want you to learn. It was an amazing place. Magic was happening there. And whoever would come there would be transfixed. And the people in Delhi at that time told us that, oh no, we give you maximum a year to 2 years. You'll have to close down. Place like this is crazy in Delhi. And Mirambika survived for 40 years.
Wow.
And unfortunately, became a fashion statement in Delhi. Like people carry Louis Vuitton bags, they also carry this. Oh, my child goes to Mirambika. We didn't want that, but it happened. Delhi is Delhi. Everything
Yes.
becomes a fashion statement.
Right.
So then, of course, we had to also turn out parents. This is not your place, sorry. It's very difficult to get the real radical parents, but it started. So what stops this? What stops Chandigarh from going through that? Mumbai and city after city after city. And there are challenges. They're going to be the biggest evil in education in this country is the boards. As long as the boards are there, no school can do what it wants to do. I know schools that are trying their best to make a breakthrough. It's not that there aren't schools like that. There are awakened individuals who want a beautiful education, an education that respects the child, that touches the soul. But they can't do it because the boards won't let them do it, and parents won't go to them if they're not affiliated to the boards. It's a vicious loop in which everyone is caught. So there has to come a point where teachers and parents have to get together and say, to hell with the boards. We don't want certificates. Let's just get together and make real learning happen. And here, everyone, parents, put in a lot of money into these schools.
Yes.
So if just a bunch of parents get together and say, this money doesn't go to that nonsense anymore. This is where it goes. You'll see what will happen. A revolution will start.
I really hope so.
I used to, because I gave up. I don't do education anymore.
Right.
Because it's as long as you have board exams and boards controlling schools and schools all in the money making business, parents being competitive, you see the whole thing is vitiated. Where will you make a breakthrough?
Right.
There are I'm saying all this, but having said that, there are a few schools in this country that have made a breakthrough.
Right.
And I think somehow, maybe thanks to AI, today, whatever the kids learn from early schooling, they're not likely to be having a job because AI is likely to do most of the work in 5, 10, 20 years.
10 years ago, Kunal.
Yeah.
10 years, no, sorry. 5, 6 years, I've stopped doing all this. So I would say 15 to 20 years ago, in my workshops, I have made this statement that 10 to 15 years, most teachers will be out of jobs.
Yes.
Because AI, at that time, there was no AI, but at that time there was media coming up, learning media, multimedia learning. And a multimedia, and I have used it myself to teach I used to work with my children with physics and literature, the two things I love so much. So I used to make them see movies of atoms. Because however much I would tell them what an atom is, they wouldn't get it till they see it.
Right.
Visually. They see the animation. You're going into the atom and how the protons and the neutrons and the electrons are just actually approximations, and you can go deeper and deeper inside and everything begins to open up, and finally there's just empty space, 90% of just empty space in matter, and the whole universe opens to them, and children sit up like that. Wow, this is science.
Right.
This is physics.
Absolutely.
And then I wouldn't teach them. After that, I would start talking to them about science, about physics. Let's talk. Let's have fun with it. And they wouldn't want to get out of the class. Our classes used to be 2-3 hours. Just one. We didn't have that period-wise thing.
Wow.
So 2-3 hours, we would just talk about one thing. And after that, hey, kids, time to go eat. No. Let's continue with this. They were hooked. That's how you open them up to science, to literature, to history. Our children don't know how to study history. They don't know how to study literature.
I remember
That's
having
sad.
a disliking for history.
Yes, it's sad.
Yes.
Because it's not
Because we
it was
don't know.
like a good story.
Yes.
You tell it like a story, it's
I had to
beautiful.
memorize it, and I used to feel so bad. Why do I have to learn so many
History
dates?
is not a civilizational story. So, I mean, there are so many things. But what we were saying is very important. If this revolution happens in city after city,
Yes.
there is hope.
So, sorry.
The
Yeah.
point I was just making, because of AI, I think whatever we teach our kids today,
Yes, yes, sorry,
let's say
I
maths,
lost that
science,
thread.
anything.
Yes, I lost the thread. If you allow me to.
Yes,
I'm
yes,
sorry,
go
I
ahead,
lost the
please.
thread. What I was saying is, I had said that what multimedia and machines can do, no teacher, however brilliant he or she may be, can. It's not possible. Now, extrapolate that, and I come to your point. What AI can do, which teacher can even hope to come in? Because you have all the information in the world
Right.
and all the creativity of the world at your command. And then you bring that to the children and you make it interactive. And the
Customized
child
learning.
learns at his own pace, customized learning. And who will need teachers? So I used to tell them at that time that if you want to remain working with children in schools, then you have to become spiritual beings, because what they will miss then, what they will desperately need at that time, are people who can work on their consciousnesses. Because that AI will never be able to do.
Right.
So that's
So the AI helps upgrade the current teachers to somewhere in between the gurukuls we are missing.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're putting 40 kids in the same class and telling them the same things, cramming. The other point I was making is, because of AI, today, whatever our kids learn over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, they're not likely to be using that in any job, because the
No.
jobs of the future cannot be predicted today.
Absolutely.
So we cannot train them on maths or science or physics or English for the sake of it, for the sake of getting a job. Till few years ago, what they learn for 10, 20 years is what they're going to do for the next 20, 30, 40 years, whether it's accounting, whether it's medical, whether it's engineering, whatever. But now, because of the AI changing the job landscape, I think the community schooling becomes a valid idea, because whatever kids learn needs to be more open about creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, which will help them possibly get a job and role and discover themselves in the future.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, AI is going to do most of the mundane human tasks, right?
True.
So that gives an opportunity from top down, where if you're not getting placed, you're not going to go to a university and pay that much money. And then bottom up, if parents can start learning and build models like community schooling, and hopefully that expands,
that
then
is-
this converges and this becomes a hope.
Right.
And one last hope I want to point out, I went for the launch of one of the Partho's books, and this is Sanatan Dharma, and there's a guy Anirban, I think, who heads the National Education Policy
who
think
was
tank.
part of the
Who was part of the National Education Policy of India think tank that they were advising the government. And he said that they were quite moved, and they are still trying to use a lot of stuff Partho has put in the integral education book in redefining the National Education Policy of India.
Oh, lovely.
Now,
That's
how much
lovely.
that filters down comes down to the
So
grassroots.
a lot of
time-
it is they're trying to bring it down, but
Yes, but so the multiple movements.
a lot more needs
So
to
AI
happen.
changing things, bottom up, parents becoming more aware, national policies changing, community schools coming up. Bunch of things give us some hope. But at the very least, all the viewers, any viewers who are watching this, should start becoming aware what, number one, they do not know. They'll have to do a lot of unconditioning, unlearning by themselves.
Yes.
Because their mindsets are all set. They believe that coming first is the best thing to do. The getting the highest marks is
all that will be outdated.
right. So firstly, they need to learn. The least they can do, we recommend read the book. Start opening
Yes.
up to the idea.
Read the book.
And then hopefully other things
And other books like this.
must be.
Read as much as you can.
Yes.
Do your research. Like you do your research on your car. Do your research on education.
So even if there's one takeaway any parents can take from this conversation, I hope it is just knowing what they didn't know so far is a good start.
Yes.
As Aristotle
Their
said,
own
knowing what you don't know.
homework,
Because
their
so
own-
far they felt they knew right, their kids are doing right.
Yes.
Now for them to start questioning that all the problems that exist is because of the
And
education.
at one time, this could have been a luxury
Yeah.
of the parents. Now it's soon going to become a necessity, because the kind of education that is being given to our children is already outdated.
Yeah.
Right.
So in a few years from now, with all this schooling and college education, they will be nowhere in tomorrow's world.
Right.
And if parents do not understand that today, I don't think they will till it hits them. No,
Yeah.
till it hits them hard. Then they'll wake up. So
So in this podcast, we really went. We discussed a lot about the differences between conventional methodology of education and in what an ideal integral education.
More than methodology, I think the approach,
The approach, yeah.
philosophy.
So philosophy, the difference between the philosophy of conventional schooling vis-a-vis integral education. What I do believe is that, or I do understand, is that conventional education takes a child maybe to the maximum potential of having a very successful academic career, whereas an education like this would enable a child to reach his own best potential.
Yeah. So I call it an evolutionary education,
Evolutionary
a
education.
utilitarian evolution.
Yes. And which is certainly more empowering, because when you discover more about yourself with techniques such as introspection and self observation that you have mentioned in the book, only then you can know what can be your best potential. And most of the children are left unaware of what they can achieve in today's education system. So I think there are a lot of things to be discussed from this book, where I would like to deep dive into the methodologies and other modalities that you've talked about in this book, but maybe that would be another podcast.
Sure,
But
absolutely.
yeah, I think this podcast would be a good starter for parents to think of an
I think it's
alternative
important enough to.
method of
I
education.
would
Yes.
just like to conclude from my side by saying a couple of lines that imagine how many Shakespeares are getting uh,
Shaken and speared.
shaken and spared in the Indian education system because they are taught that learn ABC to Z like it is given in the book. How many Pandit Ravi Shankars or Sachin Tendulkars are
Yeah.
being rejected from their family, society, culture, education because they are being forced to study maths or education or engineering or science, and they're made into something they're not meant to be.
Yes.
They're forced into becoming engineers. Like there are lakhs of engineers in India, but and there are lakhs of unfilled jobs, but there is no match. This skill is not matching because their true potential is not to be an engineer. They never wanted to be an engineer. They didn't want to be an educator. The people who are doing the jobs are doing just to pay the bills, just to keep going, just to.
Yes.
So the system, if we all were to start thinking about this problem, will realize everyone is meant to do different things. Let them explore.
Yes.
Let them be integrally educated. Let them grow into their best being that they could be. Right?
Yes.
This is
Well
what I
said,
felt.
well articulated.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd take a moment to once again highly recommend this book for all parents and all the people who are in the field of education, because this will really enhance our perspective towards educating our children. Thank you. Thank you, Partho, for
Thank
your
you.
time.
My
Thank you,
pleasure.
Kunal.
Thank you. Thank you.